All right, welcome to Valiant Watch. We're back. We've got a great show for you. We're talking Bloodshot. We're talking Fallen World. We have some crazy news from NYCC 2019. All that and more coming at you right now.
So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with news because there's a lot to cover. Valiant's been real busy, especially like you said with NYCC going on. It's kind of a good thing that we held on to do the show a little bit because there's been so much that's been going on. We mentioned it a little bit in our last show that the Harbinger rights moved from Sony to Paramount,
Yeah.
and kind of didn't really dive into what it meant for the connected universe, especially with the Bloodshot movie coming out with Sony. They've created a situation like Marvel and Sony between Spider-Man, where it's just going to create a conflict of creating their connected movie universe. It's something that we definitely want to keep an eye on going forward as their movies start to get close to completion and see how they tie them in together. But at least it does mean that Harbinger's gonna be fast tracked because
Yeah.
this transition means it's gonna happen, and that's
Exactly.
exciting of itself. So, but
Yeah, and the good thing about that too is that hopefully Sony's learned something from their experience with Marvel and from the get-go starts on a more naturally symbiotic, mutually beneficial relationship and goes with going forward with Harbinger and Bloodshot.
yeah, definitely, it's mutually beneficial for everybody to be on board for a connected universe like this.
Hmm.
But the Valiant also announced a new series titled The Visitor, a five-issue series from former DC Comics president Paul Levitz and Russ Manning Award nominee MJ Kim, which follows the arrival of a mysterious figure into the Valiant universe with a deadly mission that could change the future and destroy parts of New York City in the process. And I looked into it. It looks pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited for it. But there was
Yeah,
a series titled The Visitor back in the 90s, and it had created some confusion on if this was a continuation or it tied into it at all. And from what I've seen, it doesn't tie in at all. It's a brand new series that is good for everybody to jump on board.
yeah. And if I remember correctly, like the thing with the original Visitor series was that they didn't reveal who his actual identity until like the very end of the series or something like that. I've actually started buying some of the issues for it so I can give it another reread because it's been a long time. And I don't know if I've ever actually read the entire thing in its entirety. But anyway, though, I'm pretty excited for it. Paul Levitz is, a name you can trust when it comes to quality writing. So I think
Right.
it'll be cool.
Yeah, definitely. As I guess a part of Valiant's new social media campaign, they're using the hashtag Valiant 2020, and
Yeah.
through that, they've been releasing. They teased the return of Quantum and Woody, and also Shadow Man. But they've been posting these images, and they've kind of, I guess they're teasing future plans for what they're gonna do in Valiant 2020.
Mm.
So one of them is from Hadrian. It just says this, it's only the beginning. Think of what I'll do tomorrow. And do you have any ideas on where that ties into?
I've been wrecking my brain. Of all the teasers, that's the one that's been driving me the most wild because
Yep.
I feel like it might be maybe they're doing like a new take on the chaos effect or like the Unity 2000 crossover or something like that. I mean, there's so many things that it could be a reference to that it's like just the perfect amount of obscure with intrigue.
Yeah. Yeah,
So I'm gonna
definitely.
be following that one very closely to see what's coming of it.
Absolutely. And the Shadow Man and Quantum and Woody tease is kind of obvious what they're going. Can you tell us
Yeah.
anything more about the Officer Fletcher one? Detective Gray, we all know you've done a lot of homicides. You ever seen one like this before? It's a crazy teaser.
Uh, yeah, I don't, I think it might, I'm hoping it's something like maybe another Savage book would be cool because then when the last time they had the character show up was at the end of that four-issue run, he's in present-day Valiant, and then that's it. Like they haven't done anything with him since like 2013-ish or something like that. I don't remember exactly when that series came out, so I'm hoping that maybe that's something.
Okay.
Like maybe being raised in the jungle around dinosaurs and stuff, maybe like mangles some drug dealers or something like that. That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm hoping it's something like that, or maybe even it could be like with the detective nod, it could be an homage to Britannia, where the whole thing there is that Anatias is basically like Batman level logic in ancient Rome. So it's
Yeah.
almost like, witchcraft because they don't think of things that logically with the whole, Zeus and all that's the cause of everything and everything's real superstitious. So they could
Okay.
maybe be doing an homage to something like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm sure we'll be following more up on it. They've been teasing it slowly, just releasing
Yeah.
little tidbits here and there. So it'll be exciting to see what their plans are for Valiant 2020. But along those lines, the Valiant solicitations for December recently came out, and we'll go into what's coming out soon. But I couldn't help but notice that the new Exo Manowar series is still not listed on the solicitations, and
Which is really weird
it
because
is
it's one of their big guns. You would think it would be front and center, especially with, all the announcements they've made lately.
Yeah, it had recently been announced to drop in November from
Mhm.
Dennis Hopeless Hallam and Emilio Laso, but here we are with the solicitations coming out for December and still no word on it. So it looks like it's gotten pushed to the Valiant 2020 plans, so we won't be seeing anything of it until next year.
Yeah, that's what it looks like, and I have mixed feelings on that because I feel like it's kind of a good idea, to come out strong, swinging in 2020. But at the same time, I feel like it would have been cool to be the book to end Valiant on a really strong note.
Yeah,
But that could be Roku. That's still coming down the pipeline. So there's, I trust that they've been killing it since 2012. So I feel like we can trust them to make good choices on that. If they're
yeah,
pushed it back, it's probably for a good reason.
yeah. They've definitely earned our trust to some degree. So I'm not like panicking yet, but I'm very ready to see the return of EXO.
For real.
But
For real.
at the with NYCC going on, we just got news that Valiant announced the Faith Taking Flight young adult novel from the New York Times bestselling author Julie Murphy. And I believe this is their first young adult novel that Valiant has dived into, and it's pretty great they're using Faith for this character. And it seems like the author's super on board. She took to Twitter immediately to start hyping it, and just really exciting news.
Yeah, I'm pretty Faith was a weird choice I don't want to say a weird choice, but a bold choice to be the first one to go into the young adult thing. But I think part of what has made her so endearing is being a female superhero who's not like a size zero and like reflects women in the real world. I think a lot of younger readers will probably gravitate towards that. So it does make sense. And with like how DC, for example, has done like so well with Raven and Mira, it only makes sense that others would want to get in on that action and spread the Valiant word.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we kind of dive into the books for this episode, we're going to be talking about a lot of what happened in September with Bloodshot and going back even farther with the whole Fallen World arc. But October is going to be a big month for Valiant. So I kind of wanted to just go over and touch over a few things that's coming out. Like you mentioned, we've got Roku #1 coming from
Yes.
Colin Bone and Ramon F. Box. Yeah, like that could be the breakout hit. I've been super excited for that one.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
got continuations on with Bloodshot #2, Doctor Mirage #3, Killers #4, Psylords
Mhm.
#5, and Livewire #11. And it looks like Livewire is coming to an end next issue with issue 12.
Yeah, I saw. I'm kind of bummed about that because it's been solid so far. So I mean, Valiant being Valiant, that is kind of the norm. That 12 issue runs is around where they start, reshuffling, re-strategizing.
Yeah.
But that was definitely one of the ones that I was maybe hoping, or that it would maybe go to like 24 before they did like another relaunch of the character, because I do think that for her first solo series they couldn't have done better as far as you know. Harbinger Wars 2 was not the most well received story,
Yeah.
but I feel like Vita Ayala took that and made pure gold out of what people were they were. I mean, the biggest complaint I would say is probably they felt like a lot of the characters were out of character, you
Mhm.
know, and like with Livewire shutting off like the world, America, all the electronics and stuff. I mean, that's pretty wild. That was pretty cool. But on the same token, she's not oblivious to how much mayhem that was going to cause for innocent people. But they took that and they made something awesome out of it. And so hopefully they're just giving it a break, and then they'll be back strong with the Livewire again. Um, Psylords, though, I'm pretty excited to hear that that one's not going to be ending anytime soon. They're gearing up on the second arc, and so I'm pretty pumped for that
Oh,
because
really? I thought it was a mini series.
that was my initial impression too until I really started getting more into it past just reading, writing reviews and stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty pumped about that because the art on it alone is fantastic, especially with the last issue. They did really, I would say, if if you hadn't read it yet, that book alone is worth picking up just to look at the art. It's that well done.
Yeah. I believe it's Renato Guedes who's doing the art on
Hmm.
that one. He's on issue number 5. It's written by Fred Van Lente.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I've been following your reviews, and it's definitely seems like a pretty great spectacle to jump into.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Without no spoilers, but the coolest thing about especially this last issue is the thing that I kind of was iffy on but intrigued about at the same time when I first started reading it was that when you first get into the first issue or two, it seems to have pretty much no connection to anything else from Valiant. And on one hand, I'm like, that's kind of playing it safe with the new miniseries, but at the same time it was like, well, they're expanding. I like the idea that they have more space books than just Exo Man of War. And then number 4 kind of brings that connection to the bigger universe while still maintaining its own identity. So I'm not
Nice.
gonna not gonna drop how they do that because it's pretty cool. But uh,
Awesome.
definitely a good series worth watching, checking out if you haven't read it yet.
And that's a great segue into the trades that are coming out because if you're looking to jump into it, this October is Psylords Volume 1, Escape Velocity. So it's perfect opportunity. You can pick up the first trade. I know Valiant's really great about doing 9.99 trades, but the first volume might be 14.99 before it drops down. We'll just kind of have to see on that one. I'm not 100% certain. But another trades that are coming out, we've got Life and Death of Toyo Harada, which I know is supposed to. It was really well received and people kind of
Yes,
liked it. So I'm excited to jump into that one. We've got a
that
Punk Mambo too, and I know you reviewed Punk Mambo. So
yeah.
like, do you have any thoughts on that volume that's coming out?
Yeah, okay, so the thing I liked about Punk Mambo is that when you look at the character, it's like this foul-mouthed British chick with a pink mohawk. It's very easy to get like well, if you guys get mad, I'm just gonna say it. It's very easy to get very Gwenpool-y with it. You know what I mean? Like meme her out. But Colin Bunn did a really good job on taking the rude, crude aspects of her and like not overdoing it, making it believable. Almost in a way, he made that like crude bravado humanize her more, like make her almost more relatable. And just, I really did not have very, and I mean this with the most lovingly way I could put it, but I didn't have super high expectations for it. I figured it'd just be, pretty fun read, whatever.
Yeah,
But as far as minis go for Punk Mambo, that was spot on. And then the last issue, like some of the reveals and what it'll mean for the future of Punk Mambo is pretty wild. So If you haven't yet, yeah, that trade's definitely one to grab. And Life and Death of Toyo. Okay, so Toyo Harada is a character that I have to find, like, every now and then I have to refresh myself on why I think so strongly about him, because it's like I love to hate him, you
Yeah,
know? Because I think in one of the chats I described him as basically like Tony Stark and Magneto mixed together with Professor Xavier's powers. So he's like the cockiest douche, but like he's right, like his the way he does things is crazy. Just everything about that series is it's definitely one of those ones that I think it'll be a slow burn to build up, and it'll definitely be one that we're still talking about from Valiant like 5-10 years
yeah,
from now.
nice. Like, yeah, even in like the Harbinger Wars and stuff, he was always that necessary cog in the story that was going on. But you
Yeah.
really nail on the head. You just love to hate him. And he's got, but like it's gonna go down pretty soon. Like he's scheming something.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, I'm tired of seeing this guy in his suit and tie, but then he does something wild, and you're like, okay, all right,
Like,
that's why they keep you around.
yeah, definitely. Uh, but the last trade we got coming out in October is the Bloodshot Salvation Deluxe Edition hardcover, and that one's Jeff Lemire's with art by Luis LaRosa, Miko Swayan, Renato Guedes, and Doug Braithwaite. Excuse me if I butchered those names, but
I
I
wouldn't have
know
done any
Jeff
better on him.
Lemire's right. I know Jeff Lemire's Bloodshot. Like I dived into it. I'm a couple volumes in, and it's really unique in how he approached the character. So if you're wanting to add this one to your collection, the hardcover deluxe edition is never a bad choice to go with.
Yep. Second that. I did. I know that Salvations was. I feel like it was not necessarily didn't divide fans, but it definitely brought a lot of debate on it, because it's not like your typical. He's like blowing up stuff and just like machine gunning people like crazy, but I liked it because it was like a different take on Bloodshot without changing any of the things that we love about Bloodshot.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's and it's comics, man. Like it's eventually they're going to return to form. So it's cool to have
Right.
a break every now and then to see something new, a new take on a character you love.
Yeah, totally.
So definitely that one's worth a grab too.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all I've got for news. I know Valiant's been busy, and it's probably only going to get busier, so next episode could be even longer for news.
Oh yeah.
But that's all I got.
Okay. All right. So you want to do Bloodshot first? Or you want to do Fallen World?
Yeah, I mean, we're already talking about Bloodshot. It's a good enough transition. Let's go ahead and dive on into it.
Okay. So I on Blood. All right. So speaking of Bloodshot, Salvations was great. Rising Spirit was Rising Spirit. Um, but dude, Tim Seeley, man, like
Yeah.
I knew the dude just from like the interview that you did with him, and just being familiar with him, his work, and just like he seems like a really cool dude. And hearing him talk about Bloodshot, you get the idea that you're like, okay, this dude is definitely a fan.
Yeah,
And then Bloodshot #1 comes out, and you're like, I had no idea how much this guy loved Bloodshot until you read that book, and
absolutely.
it's amazing.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like when I got the chance to sit down and talk to him, I I knew he was an action movie buff. That's something that
Mhm.
he kind of commonly tweets about, and he's always diving into. So I knew him coming into Bloodshot that was gonna play a factor in how he approached it, and he didn't really let me down when he let me know that John Woo were big inspirations and his films were big inspirations for the visuals and the cinematic scope of this book. And well, he really captured that because
Yeah.
he nails this like this badass action hero vibe that there's explosions and it's chaotic and it's grueling, but he's just the best there is at it. So he's just moving through it just step by step, and it gets crazier and crazier, but he almost just never backs down from it. And what he packed into one issue was just crazy. I was expecting like this nonstop action issue, but
Mhm.
I didn't expect that, I guess, because it was a lot to take in and almost exhausting by the time you put it down. I put it in the second read and I was like, okay, like take a deep breath because this one it's it's pretty intense.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
really
no
is.
doubt about it, man. And and that's what like that part of it is what really I think is what makes the difference because I don't think anybody that heard Tim Seeley and Brett Booth doing Bloodshot expected it to be like, he's going to be sitting around reading Hemingway and sipping tea. Like you knew
Right.
somebody was going to get shot in the face but like at the same time, while he gives us all this like crazy bloody fan service, he still takes the time to like organically but swiftly build up a whole new chapter of crazy for Bloodshot beyond just the madness,
Yeah.
and it's a testament. It's like literally like a love letter almost to all things Bloodshot,
Yeah.
especially when what's that dude's name? My bad, Celia, I can't remember his name, but the dude from the Black Bar, he was going on his rant about how dangerous Bloodshot is, and it's got like
Mm.
the collage of image. He's even slipped
Yeah.
in, that one Bloodshot #1 from way back in the day cover
Oh
image they
yeah, the
slipped in
reference.
there. And it was
Yeah.
just like I was like, man, this dude right here, he knows what he's doing, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there are a lot of those moments where you said it does feel kind of fan servicey, but it's just so intense for Bloodshot. Like it
Yeah.
gets you riled up so quick and it's awesome for a comic to do that. I think that's what Bloodshot does. And Tim Seeley just pulls it off, but Brett Booth's artwork, oh my gosh. He
Yes.
has a 90s vibe to it you can see the influence. But
Mhm.
Tim Seeley described it as a sexier version of Jim Lee, that's almost more fluid. And I I I kind of get that, especially when reading
Yeah.
through Bloodshot 1, like especially the larger poses of Bloodshot, of like the real action ones. I get a sleek Jim Lee vibe out of it, and it's great '90s stuff. It's not '90s in the bad way, It's everything you loved about the '90s, and
Exactly.
that's what was really cool to see from him. But they just combined to make this really cool action comic, and it knows what it is. And I don't think it's gonna stray from that anytime soon. So it should be pretty exciting to just keep reading month after month.
Yeah, exactly. And Brett Booth, man, he's one of those dudes where when he's on it, like you just can't deny why he's lasted in the game so long. Like for a while, he was one of the only reasons why I was keeping up with Flash. And
Yeah.
then, after a while, I was like, yeah, I'm good on that. But like, and then him coming, but him coming to Bloodshot, especially like the one image I'm sure that everybody who's got drawn in by Bloodshot scene where he's in like the John Woo pose with the two pistols
Yeah,
diving in the
totally.
air, like that page right there it's everything
Yeah.
encapsulated about why he's like the perfect artist for this run.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah, I think like it just hits the nail on the head because it's so explosive and so intense and so nonstop that it's hard not to credit a lot of it to Brett Booth because a lot of that design and a lot of that the visual spectacle came from him because Tim Seeley's approach to writing, he has his influences and what needs to hit, and he very much relied on Brett Booth and his obvious talent. So what he brought to Bloodshot could define him. I think it was important for them to do a run with this level of talent with the movie coming up because there are going to be a lot of eyes on Bloodshot,
oh
and
yeah,
those eyes are going to go right to Bloodshot #1 that just came out. And I think Valiant knows that. I don't think that's lost on them by any means. So I think
mhm,
they're well aware of the importance of this issue, and it really holds up well. Like I've read it more than a few times now, and it's just really badass.
yeah. And that I'm glad that you mentioned the movie too because they're very rarely have is there modern day #1s that when you read it you're like, well, this #1's still gonna matter.
Mhm.
But like undoubtedly when that movie drops, like the original Bloodshot #1 and most likely this one will be the two that like go through the roof
Yeah.
on the spectator market. But also it'll I feel like unless they just go completely left field with it with the movie, that anybody who picks up Bloodshot #1 and then goes and sees the movie is going to be like, okay, these guys definitely know what they're doing, and it's going to open them up to like a floodgate of all things Valiant, because just just going through Bloodshot #1, if you've only ever heard of the character and you're like, okay, he's like the Punisher, but with like Wolverine powers, but like cooler than both of them. So you're like, okay, that's kind of cool, but I'm kind of still kind of iffy, like this like chalky Frankenstein looking dude. But then you
Yeah.
see him like shape shift in and all, uh, singing crazy songs while he's doing crazy stuff in a tank and all this other stuff, and it's like, okay, like this
Yeah.
is this is the kind of stuff like only in comics can you get that kind of entertainment.
Yeah.
And they just nailed it so well.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. I think if you haven't checked out Bloodshot, it's the best time to do it. This issue is gonna probably hook you in and make you one excited for the movie and probably ready to dive into other Bloodshot comics. It's that good.
Okay,
But
so
that's pretty much everything I got on Bloodshot. It's just hard not to keep hyping it because
yeah,
I've been
it
excited.
really. I'm probably gonna read it again tonight after we're
I
done here, because
like I
it's
read
that
it
legitimately
before
that
this,
good.
so I think it's so exciting. It's one of those books that it just gets you hyped.
Yeah, and it makes you feel like you're on the ground floor of something big. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I don't even know. Like this is like the nerd version of watching like this the shuttle take off when they were gonna put a man on the moon for the first time or something. Like there's something about it that has like that vibe to it,
yeah,
and I can't get enough of it. But okay, so moving on, because otherwise we're gonna be here all day.
yeah.
Fallen World,
That's true.
Fallen World. What'd you think of it?
Okay, so yeah, Fallen World. It was a great time to read it because I had just jumped into Rye, and he is a brilliant character, and the storytelling potential with him is just awesome. And Fallen World is exactly what I want after the introduction of Rye, like things that you can take this character and do with. Fallen World is on the top of that list. Like you get this twist that Rai is now a peaceful warrior. He's looking after the fallen New Japan, and you're set in this world that is vastly different than what we see in the Rai series. So it's pretty crazy. It starts to jump around into a bunch of different Valiant characters, and you see the quasi return of Bloodshot almost, and the persona, I guess, or the tech
Yeah,
or the abilities of Bloodshot get rolled into the story. And of course, you get the Eternal Warrior. So I thought it was really cool how they kept the elements of the connected Valiant universe, and then they just go in this crazy wild direction with Fallen World, where you've got dinosaurs and these like conflicting groups, and it's just really wild action. I believe it was it the what was his name? The Bloodfather? After
Bloodfather.
he
Yeah,
had Yeah, the Bloodfather, after he had merged with Bloodshot, the father from New Japan. That moment there was when I was just like holding the book and I just had to show whoever was near me. I was like, look at this, like look at how awesome this is. It was like one of those moments, and damn, Valiant's good at that. So Valiant World or Fallen World had a lot of those moments where you're just like, oh, that's so cool. And
yeah.
the story was a little scattered. They they had what, 5 issues, I think,
Hmm.
and it's a solid run to tell a full story, and you could tell they hit almost tangents where you kind of thought, where's this going, and then they brought it back into the main story. And that was one of the only issues I noticed reading it is it bounced around a lot when I kept wanting to focus on Rye or just the Bloodfather and like that conflict. But outside of that, it was actually really well done. I mean, all the
Hmm.
artwork was just spectacular. Who doesn't want to see Riot, Eternal Warrior just bashing on dinosaurs and stuff? I mean, it's like
Exactly. Yeah.
it hit that note where you're just like, it's really cool, and I think that's just it's another nod to what Valiant does. Tim Seeley had mentioned it, and when they had talked to him about Bloodshot, and he said he noticed that they take their characters seriously, but not too seriously. And
Hmm.
Fallen World walks that line really well between taking the story seriously and taking its readers' interest seriously, but the events that happen, you're just like, what the hell is going on? Like they have a sense about them that they don't take the story too seriously to where it can't have fun. So it's still an interesting and engaging read. And Fallen World, I thought, was a great example of Valiant walking that line between taking its characters seriously, like Ryan, Eternal Warrior, and
Mhm.
Bloodfather, and then not too seriously because they're all bashing up on dinosaurs. And
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. And that's like, it's something that keeps me coming back to their comics because I know they're going to be fun and super interesting. And it's that kind of that that approach to their storytelling that I really enjoy. And Fallen World is something that you're not going to find anywhere else or with any other publisher. Like that story, that that concept only happens at Valiant, and it only
Mhm.
happens with the past of these characters that we know and what they bring to the table. So this is really Valiant using the toys at their disposal to the best of their ability, and this is just awesome as a fan to watch. So really cool stuff. What
Yeah.
do you think?
And then, well, one of the things that I thought was pretty daring on Dan Abnett, and you did kind of touch on this a little bit, where it kind of does get a little scattery, is the fact that with Rye, it took they started with just focusing on him and his lore, and then eventually they tackled what happened with Bloodshot, what happened with Ninjak, and so on and so forth. Like all the other characters kind of had their own minis, and they did the whole 4001 thing. But with this one, he's got 5 issues to not only remind us what happened before, set the stage for what the present is, what the future is going to be, but also to expand on the future of Valiant without making it too busy. And sometimes there are little slips, but at the same time, it's it's pretty impressive to take 5 issues and build and basically an entire line worth of comics. Because I can tell you right now, if they did like a 6 issue solo just on like Bloodfather, I would snatch it up in a second.
Yeah, without
Uh, Eternal Warrior and the new Geomancer. Like,
it.
I would love to see what goes on with that.
Yeah.
That was actually one of the things that I thought was cool, is how they brought War Mother in, because previously, she'd been a futuristic character in Valiant. She exists during all the things that are going on in Rye, but you never really see the two of them interact.
Mhm.
So how they slid her in there and made her short story such an integral part to bring like the geomancer in, and she's like stronger than ever, and swoops in and saves the day and all that stuff. I thought that was just really, really smart of him to plant so many seeds. So even if, like, he's not the one that has time to go back and tackle it, that still leaves it open for, anybody else with the cojones to step in and be like, okay, I see what you're doing with this raw stuff. Like, I want to throw my hat in the ring too. And then the other thing too is, like you said, where, there's never a time when you don't feel like Bloodfather is not a credible threat. Like, he's pretty much kicking butt the entire time, you know.
Yeah.
And then when like the Circadians get involved, and there's like the suicide bombers and all that crazy stuff, like it's there's some heavy things going on. But then, an issue later, you got Rye like kickboxing a gator man in a pit. So it's like the perfect balance. It's like, just when you're like, it almost feels like it might get heavy handed, they're like, well, how would you like to see an elephant with a giant mace just start tearing through a ton of robots? Like, yes, I would very much like to see a foul mouthed elephant man stomp on people. Like, like that's, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's great
Yeah.
stuff, like, honestly.
Definitely. And it always happens
And
like right at the moment you want it to in the story too. So like they know right when to give it to you.
mhm, exact like the pacing of it is, even with like the narrative itself getting a little busy at times, just the pacing of how the action and the world building, I think, was spectacular, throughout Fallen World. And I really like too, another thing that we never really got to see too much of is just kind of like, for lack of a better word, like the bromance between Galad and Rye.
Yeah.
because they both have so much in common. They both are, these chosen warriors who've seen more than their fair share of battles, and they almost have like it's almost like Eternal Warrior and Ninjak, where they have like a bond where they're like almost frenemy-ish, because they kind of their individual quirks, they kind of irk each other, but at the same time, they have this deep level of respect for each other because they understand each other that you can't just like make that happen, like very rarely do you get that kind of bond between characters that feels organic. You have like Batman, Superman, sometimes Green Lantern, Flash, Green Arrow, like when those guys get together, that sort of thing. But
Mhm.
it's not very often that you can just pair two iconic characters and it doesn't feel like you were like, well, this guy sells books and this guy sells books, we're just going to slap them together and see what happens.
Yeah. And these two, they feel like, they work together, but there's some conflict where they're feeling each other out. And
Hmm.
yeah, there's this inherent chemistry with them that just works. And that does drive the series. I think that's what keeps you turning the pages.
Hmm. Exactly. And one of the things that I like too is when it was like with the build up with Raijin, because he's such a going into the book, he was such an X factor because, he starts off, he's on the side with Bloodfather, and he very much could have just stayed in that role. And I wouldn't have really had an issue with that. But like the slow build into making him more than just another goon or, you know, evil like a Ultron Jr., where it's like, of course, he's a machine, so people suck, but go and then like the little teaser they did of the Rise series that'll be coming out, where it's kind of the two of them almost in a of mice and men kind of travel in the backwoods kind of thing is it makes me more hyped for the future just to see how the two develop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the teasers for the next Rise series. Who's the creative team on that one? Do you know?
Dan, I think I know Abbott's on it, and for the life of me I cannot remember the artist just yet, but
Okay, but
we'll
Dan
edit that
Abnett,
in
I'm
later.
sure it's gonna be great.
Yeah, exactly. As long as yeah, if we got the man who got the ball rolling, then it
Yeah,
should still be pretty good.
definitely.
And then even with that, they only teased a couple pages, but it was still just a great balance of, humor and action.
Yeah.
So it's like hopefully that'll be another one that we see make it to an issue 12, if not further.
Hmm.
So that was
Yeah,
pretty
absolutely.
pretty sweet.
Definitely. Well, that's pretty much all I got on Fallen World.
All right. And then so first appearance of Turok, yeah?
Yeah, we got into the discussion that people were fans of Turok here, so why not? It was what was the exact issue again?
Magnus, the robot fighter number 12.
I think that's it. I just read it as Magnus number 12. I know it's a larger title. It's a pretty crazy story, and this is one of the Valiant classics that you open it up and you're like, okay, this is what I'm getting into. And I was at least glad to see they handled Turok well
Yeah.
because there was a potential there that they could have gone in a direction that wasn't so savory in today's world. So I was glad to see that Turok was definitely how his persona was approached and handled in the story was well, and he was generally just the guiding force with a little bit of badass nature in it, and
Hmm.
but it really wasn't the story about Turok, and that's kind of what I was disappointed in. I get that it's the first appearance. Rarely are first appearances wholly dedicated to the character, and this was in a story or in a series that wasn't a Turok centric one. But I just wanted more of Turok in it. I wanted more of them clashing with all the beasts and all of that. And this issue, it was it feels like it's a product of its time, and
Yeah.
with that there comes limitations, I guess.
Hmm.
And you bring expectations into a book like this where it's not going to be a revolutionary book. You're not going to walk away and think this was the greatest book. This isn't Bloodshot where I'm just like, hey, you got to check this out while I'm reading it. It's
Yeah.
it's definitely it's not that, but it's interesting to dive into because this is kind of what I wanted to do with Valiant Classics, just to see where they come from and see their roots and see what this publisher has done throughout the years. And this is a great example to dive into. They had secured the licensing for Turok, so they brought him in because he had bounced around to a few different companies and always, they had done things. I was exposed to the character through the N64 game.
Same.
so,
Yeah. That was
so
one of the few classic books that I wasn't really like. I was like, oh, okay. And then I played the game and I was like, all right, let me go back and see what that's about.
right, it's
Yeah.
like, I never thought that me playing the old N64 Turok game would lead me to being interested in a Valiant Classic book. But here we are. It was cool. It's got some campy moments, some cheesy moments, but it's also got some really cool stuff in there that you're not gonna be disappointed that you read it by any means. It's not gonna be. It's definitely worth your collection if you see it flipping through the the bins at your comic store. It's definitely worth picking up just because it's so out there and wild. Like
Yeah.
it's this book that it's so out there. I mean, what do you think
It's
of
very,
it?
very, it's very okay. So when I read, I went back and reread that, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to just backtrack and like work my way back up to it because with it's very much like it's cool for Torok in the fact that like you said, being a Native American centric character before people were upset about like the Washington Redskins being a thing.
Yeah,
Very much could have been like, yeah, like some lawyers might get called on that, but
yeah,
they took it
yeah.
very serious. It was almost like
Good.
it was almost like Mike Grell like had slid in there to handle Turok, and then they just went back to the rest of the story. And I'm a big fan of Magnus, even though there's some elements of the character that haven't necessarily aged well as far as like you said, it was a product of its time, but it wasn't bad, you
Yeah,
know. And then even with with Magnus number 12, you got all these like weird time anomalies and stuff going on. So it's what it lacks in being groundbreaking and makes up for in just like sheer campy fun,
yeah,
you know. So I think that like then when it was a thing, if reading it then we would have been a lot more like what, but now it's like you're like okay, like I'm still digging this though, like this
yeah.
is the kind of stuff that got me to this point. Like if it wasn't
Mhm.
for goofy stuff like that when I was younger, then I wouldn't be here now
Yeah,
talking about Magnus number 12. So
definitely.
in its ways, it stands the test of time in its ways. Maybe not the ways it originally intended to be, but it ain't stupid if it works.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say on that one. I think you definitely captured all of my thoughts on it too.
All right, so you got anything else you want to wrap up before we wrap up?
Well, I guess our next episode, we covered some of the releases that are going to happen in October. I'm sure we're going to be talking about Roku number one. That's going to be a tough one to pass up, but we'll decide on the next couple books in the meantime, and we'll be back for another episode of Valiant Watch.
All right, guys, stay tuned in. I'm sure you can't wait. I can't wait. Roku number one. More NYCC news and loads else. So catch us next time.